This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of this pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we always find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. First, the United States government donated personal protective equipment or PPE and hygiene kits to support Davao City's efforts to address the coronavirus disease pandemic. U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines, Sang Kim, turned over the items to Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte Carpio during an online event on Wednesday. U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, together with the U.S. company Procter & Gamble, will provide 1,450 hygiene kits for the city, which will then distribute the kits to facilities caring for vulnerable sectors. The hygiene kits contain face masks, soap, laundry detergent, dishwashing liquid, toothbrushes, and sanitary napkins. The PPE donation is part of the U.S. Defense Threat Reduction Agency's previously announced nearly 50 million pesos worth of PPE and medical supplies to hospitals across the country. Now, this assistance is part of the U.S. government's nearly 1 billion peso investment to support Philippines' COVID-19 response. Now, students in Thailand are continuing to call for a monarchy reform, considered a taboo subject there. They've also demanded an end to the intimidation of activists and reforms to the constitution, which was written under military rule. Joining us live from Thailand is Cristel Mapa. Cristel.
Hi, Alma. It's good to be back.
Good to see you, Cristel. Good. Go ahead.
Yes. Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha issued his sternest warning yet to protesters seeking his resignation, saying they were creating deeper divisions that could cause the collapse of the country. If we want to overcome each other politically, the nation will collapse. If that happens, just wait, everybody will be on fiery land engulfed in flames, General Prayut told reporters. His comments come after a month of near daily rallies led by students calling for his ouster, a new constitution and fresh election, with some drawing over 10,000 protesters. Some of those demonstrators have only open called for reforms of the country's monarchy, a taboo topic in a country with a strict law that punishes perceived royal insults with up to 15 years in prison. Earlier on Wednesday, the police expanded a crackdown on protest leaders with the arrest of Tatep Rungprai Paketsari and Panumas Singh Prom of the Free Youth Group. Separately, a minister said the government is pushing for the removal of 1,000 online posts, videos, and other content that breaks the law after Facebook vowed legal action over the censorship of a group discussing the monarchy. A private Facebook group called Royalist Marketplace had more than 1 million members posting about the royal family before it was blocked in Thailand on Monday. The social media giant said it was compelled by the government to block the group and is preparing to mount a legal challenge against the move. But the Ministry of Digital Economy and Society now wants to obtain court removal orders relating to 1,024 more URLs on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and 5 other sites, Minister Budipongse Punakanta told reporters. The offending pages allegedly broke the Computer Crimes Act, which has a 5-year maximum jail penalty and is often used to stifle dissent online. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much for your updates there. You stay safe, stay healthy, Cristel. Thank you for your time.
Likewise, Alma. Reporting live from Thailand, this is Cristel Mapa. We live in interesting times.
And joining us live from Vietnam now, here is Chriselle Yacuna. Chriselle.
Hello, Alma. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you too. Go ahead.
Vietnam reported no new case of COVID-19 on Thursday morning. The country's tally stood at 1,034 with 632 recoveries and 30 deaths, according to the Ministry of Health. Let's go over our first headline. Vietnam, 15th best performer in Asia for digital well-being. A global report on digital quality of life placed Vietnam at 54th out of 85 economies and 15th in Asia, surpassing many of its neighbors. Vietnam scored an average of 0.5 of a scale of 1 and is ahead of many Southeast Asian countries, neighbors like Thailand, the Philippines, Indonesia. According to a report released by Surfshark, a virtual private network service based in the British Virgin Islands. The report ranked 85 countries and territories based on the 5 fundamental pillars that define the digital quality of life: internet quality, affordability, e-security, online government services, and e-infrastructure. Vietnam ranked high in terms of internet affordability, as it only takes 62 seconds to access the cheapest mobile internet and 184 minutes to access the cheapest broadband internet, the report stated. The country has not done such a good job in terms of internet infrastructure. Vietnam is placed 73rd in terms of internet usage, with only 49.6 out of 100 inhabitants accessing the internet. Many rural areas in Vietnam are not covered by online services. Vietnam also ranked 59th in terms of electronic security, as data protections in Vietnam are very low, the report said. Meanwhile, e-government development in Vietnam also ranked low at 58, with the country needing to improve its online services. A government program to turn Vietnam into a digital nation approved by Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc last year wants 80% of the population to carry out transactions digitally and aims to provide broadband internet 5G connections nationwide in the next 5 years. Local telecom firms are chasing a head start in the 5G race, as Vietnam expects to become an early adopter of the technology. Denmark is the best performer in the world for digital well-being, followed by Sweden and Canada, while poor and war-torn countries like Bangladesh, Kenya, and Lebanon are in the bottom list. Another business and technology update, Alma. US allocates $1.4 million toward the Ho Chi Minh City's smart city development. The US will provide a grant over 1.45 million US dollars in technical assistance to help Ho Chi Minh City build a smart city operations center. The grant includes over $1.16 million non-refundable aid from the U.S. Trade and Development Agency, while the remainder is provided by American consulting services company Winborn Consulting, who will carry out the project. Todd Abrahano, USCDA Chief Operating Officer and Head of Agency, said the agreement signing ceremony last Tuesday, and I quote, "Ho Chi Minh City has an ambitious smart city agenda, and the USCDA is an ideal partner to support its goals." End quote. The partnership will help the city deploy cutting-edge ICT technologies and advanced data analytics that innovative U.S. companies are ready to supply, he said. USCDA's funding will help the city develop implementation plans for an intelligent operations center, a smart city's priority that will collect and analyze real-time data and information to help decision makers govern, plan, and shape the future development of Ho Chi Minh City. The Operations Center is one of the 4 pillars of the master plan to transform Vietnam's southern economic hub into a smart city in the 2017 to 2020 period, with a vision toward 2025. In 2017, the southern metropolis began implementing a plan to transform itself into a smart city by 2020. The goal of this ambitious plan is to use scientific advances to resolve the problems and the city faces, including a rapid population spurt, unsustainable economic growth, inadequate forecasting, planning and management, poor healthcare, education and transport, pollution, and inefficient public administration. The plan will focus on creating a better living environment for the city's residents. Those are the updates from Ho Chi Minh City. Alma?
All right. Thank you very much, Chriselle, for your updates there in Vietnam. Thank you, EBC Vietnam Bureau.
Thank you so much, Alma. Reporting live from Ho Chi Minh City, this is Chriselle Yakuna. We live in interesting times.
A lockdown in Myanmar's conflict-stricken Rakhine was expanded late on Wednesday to the entire state, halting the movement of more than 3 million people as the number of coronavirus cases steadily climbs. More than 100 new infections were confirmed across Myanmar in 36 hours, the largest jump so far, bringing the total to 580, with most new cases in the northwestern state. Rakhine is one of the poorest states in the country, with substandard healthcare facilities and a lack of access to education in some remote parts. It's also home to about 130,000 Rohingya Muslims displaced by conflict and confined to camps under what Amnesty International described as apartheid conditions. Another 150,000 displaced ethnic Rakhine are scattered across the state, having clashes between Myanmar's military and ethnic Rakhine insurgents. State capital Sittwe has been under lockdown and an overnight curfew since the weekend, an order initially extended to 4 further townships on Wednesday morning and then the whole state in the evening. Due to a sharp increase of COVID-19 virus cases, people in all townships in Rakhine are to stay at home in order to effectively prevent any further spread, according to a statement released by the Ministry of Health and Sports. Under the new rules, only one member of each household may step out for essential shopping. Exceptions include civil servants and factory workers. Local officials toured neighborhoods in Kiao Piu Township with loudspeakers Wednesday evening, warning residents to wear masks when going outside. 3 years since violent persecution likened to ethnic cleansing for several 100,000 ethnic Rohingya from Myanmar to Bangladesh, UN Chief Antonio Guterres has called for greater urgency to resolving their immediate suffering and the long-term refugee crisis. In a statement marking the start of the forced displacement of Rohingya and other communities from Myanmar's Rakhine state, Mr. Guterres called for the root causes of the bloodshed to be addressed. The UN Secretary General also renewed his call for the creation of conditions that would allow the safe, voluntary, dignified, and sustainable return of all refugees. The ultimate responsibility rests with Myanmar authorities, Mr. Guterres said in his statement, as they had committed to implementing the recommendations of an advisory panel on resolving problems in Rakhine State, produced in collaboration with the Kofi Annan Foundation. The crisis began in August 2017 following attacks on 30 police outposts, clearance operations by the Myanmar military, or Tatmadaw, against suspected insurgents among the mainly Muslim ethnic Rohingya were likened to a textbook example of ethnic cleansing by former UN Rights Chief Zeid Rayad Al Hussein. Last September, the Independent International Fact-Finding Mission on Myanmar, set up by the Human Rights Council, warned that the 600,000 Rohingya remaining inside Myanmar face systemic persecution and live under the threat of genocide. The Education Ministry in Cambodia said that kindergartens and primary schools will reopen next month. Schools have been closed for more than 3 months due to the pandemic. Ministry spokesman Ross Sovetcha said school reopening is permitted for those institutions which can implement the health safety standards. He also said kindergartens and primary schools must strictly adhere to the health guidance, including social distancing, wearing masks, washing hands, and taking body temperatures to ensure the safety of the students. Japan will partially reopen travel to and from Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar in early September as restrictions that were imposed amid the pandemic are gradually eased. In a report by Asahi Shimbun, it said that an agreement was reached between Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi and his counterparts in each of the countries that it will allow those who have a long-term residency permit in Japan, such as technical interns and business people, to travel back and forth between them. Mr. Motegi visited the three countries from August 22 to 24 to discuss reopening travel. Mr. Motegi also said students from the countries will receive a scholarship and other types of financial support from the Japanese government will also be allowed to enter Japan soon. Mr. Motegi also held talks with Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi on August 24, and he said that the Japanese government will help Myanmar's efforts to improve the situation of Rohingya Muslims as much as possible. Meanwhile, Malacanang confirmed that cancer-stricken Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, or PhilHealth President and Chief Executive Officer Ricardo Morales, has already tendered his resignation. This is to confirm that the Office of the President has received today, August 26, the resignation letter of Philippine Health, or PhilHealth Chief Executive Ricardo Morales. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said in a press statement, and Morales stepped down from office after President Duterte had expressed the belief that it would be best for the embattled PhilHealth chief to let go of his current position. On Tuesday, Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara said that the President on Monday night acknowledged that Morales needs to give up his post, considering the PhilHealth officials' on and off health situation. Mr. Roque said the President has yet to accept, or has already accepted, Morales' resignation. On August 10, Morales filed medical leave upon his doctor's advice to undergo 6 cycles of chemotherapy to treat his lymphoma, or cancer of the lymph nodes. His decision to go on leave also came after President Duterte on August 7 directed Guevara to lead the task force mandated to investigate the alleged widespread corruption within PhilHealth. Morales' health condition has prompted calls for his resignation. Apart from his health problem, Morales has also been in hot water due to his supposed failure to address the supposed rampant corruption within PhilHealth under his leadership. Morales, a retired Army general, took the helm of PhilHealth in August last year. In other news, Hurricane Laura was barreling towards the coast of the southern U.S. state of Louisiana and Texas as a monster Category 4 storm, prompting warnings of unsurvivable storm surge and evacuation orders for hundreds of thousands of Gulf Coast residents. The Miami-based National Hurricane Center said Laura was expected to make landfall along the Gulf Coast late Wednesday or early Thursday U.S. time.
Right. We've already deployed 400 buses, 38 aircraft, 82 boats, 202 high-profile vehicles, and 60 ambulances, with an additional 75-plus paratransit vehicles that have been ordered that will be available to be provided to assist in the movement of people. We have more than 5,000 people that are already sheltered, and we are prepared to take in many more as we continue to encourage everybody to evacuate from regions that could be the greatest impacted by the hurricane.
Like all weather events, this storm can make shifts at any time, and so we must remain prepared. Canceled. Due to the fluid nature of inclement weather, we should all prepare for strong winds along with downed trees, downed powered lines, and power outages. As the day progresses, it's imperative that you make preparations for Hurricane Laura, as well as plan to stay in place tonight until this inclement weather passes over our parish.
Backing winds of 150 miles per hour or 240 kilometers per hour, Laura had strengthened almost to Category 5, the highest on the Saffir-Simpson wind scale, and defined as sustained winds of 157 miles per hour or higher. If the storm remains this strong at landfall, it would be one of the 13 strongest storms ever to hit the U.S., although the NHC said that rapid weakening is expected after Laura moves inland. As an extremely dangerous Category 4 hurricane, the second highest on the Saffir-Simpson wind scale, Laura could pummel the Louisiana and Texas coast with storm surge, extreme winds, and flash flooding, according to the NHC. An unsurvivable storm surge with large and destructive waves will cause catastrophic damage from Sea Rim State Park, Texas, to intracoastal city, Louisiana, it said. Storm surges could penetrate up to 30 miles inland along parts of the coasts, and peak surge coupled with high tide could see water as high as 15 to 20 feet above normal levels. In New Orleans, meanwhile, devastated by Hurricane Katrina in 2005, the historic French Quarter was empty of tourists while sandbags were piled up in front of the doorways of colonial-style buildings and windows were boarded up with plywood. New Orleans remains traumatized from Katrina, which made landfall as a Category 3 storm, flooding 80% of the city and killing more than 1,800 people. Laura earlier caused flooding in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, killing at least 25 people. In Cuba, it caused material damage but no deaths. Now, there are about 4.1 million Filipinos living in the United States. In Texas, there are about 137,713 Filipinos. Asean in Focus will be right back.
The New Era University, in its 45th year of excellence, discipline, and service to humanity, will offer online education all levels beginning this first semester academic year 2020 to 2021 through the NEU Virtual Learning Environment, or NEU VLE. New Era University offers a complete basic education cycle from kindergarten up to senior high school, offering all strands. NEU has 18 colleges, and 2 graduate schools. It also offers ALS and ETI. Best of all, NEU has the most affordable tuition fees among private universities in the Philippines. NEU is at Quezon City, the city of San Fernando, Pampanga, General Santos City, South Cotabato, Lipa City, Batangas, and Pinugay, Baras, Rizal.
New Era University is under the stewardship of Dr. Dilo L. Rosas.
What are you waiting for? Be part of the new normal. Enroll now. Classes start on October 5, 2020.
The Court of Appeals has denied a motion for reconsideration filed by Rappler Chief Executive Officer Maria Ressa, asking to reconsider its order disallowing her to travel abroad pending an appeal of her libel conviction before a Manila trial court. The Appellate Court's Special 14th Division, through Associate Justice Geraldine C. Fiel Macaraig, said in its resolution dated August 20 and released on Wednesday, in view of the foregoing, Ressa still failed to prove that her intended travel to the U.S. and her physical presence in the events are necessary and urgent. To reiterate, video conferencing may allow her to participate in the events without leaving the Philippines. Ressa had asked the court to reconsider its 7-page resolution dated August 18, where the court has said that while the lower courts had previously allowed her to leave the country, Ressa's subsequent conviction changes her situation. The CA also said Ressa failed to show the necessity and urgency of her request to travel to the United States from August 23 to September 19 this year. Associate Justices Danton Q. Bueser and Carlito B. Calpatura concurred in the decision. The Appellate Court also found no sufficient evidence to justify the intention of the co-founder of Rappler to personally receive an award. The Office of the Solicitor General, the CA said, also successfully demonstrated that Resa's intended travel is not necessary and urgent because there are other ways for her to participate in the U.S. event. In other news, the United States on Wednesday announced sanctions and restrictions on 24 Chinese companies and associated officials for taking part in building artificial islands in disputed waters in the South China Sea. The 24 state-owned firms include subsidiaries of construction giant China Communications Construction Company, telecommunications firms, and a unit of the China Shipbuilding Group. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, in a statement, said, since 2013, the PRC, or People's Republic of China, has used its state-owned enterprises to dredge and reclaim more than 3,000 acres on disputed features in the South China Sea, destabilizing the region, trampling on the sovereign rights of its neighbors, and causing untold environmental devastation. The U.S. Commerce Department said the companies enabled China to construct and militarize disputed outposts in the South China Sea. The 24 companies were placed on the Commerce Department's entity list, which allows it to block exports of U.S. goods and materials to them. In addition, Mr. Pompeo said individuals associated with the South China Sea operations will be unable to obtain visas to visit the United States. The names of the individuals were not made available. Secretary Pompeo on Wednesday also blasted HSBC, the Britain-based Hong Kong banking giant, over reports that it had frozen access for executives of Next Media to their personal bank accounts and credit cards, as Beijing and Hong Kong security authorities pressured the independent media group. The blacklisting of the Chinese companies was the latest step in Washington's efforts to push back against Beijing over its military buildup in areas of the South China Sea where sovereignty is contested by countries including Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Taiwan. Meanwhile, China said a U.S. spy plane entered a no-fly zone used by the Chinese military for live-fire drills, branding it an act of provocation, according to state media. The U-2 reconnaissance jets fly over an area in northern China, violated safety rules between the two nations, Xinhua reported, citing Chinese Defense Ministry spokesman Wu Qian. The U.S. action could easily have resulted in misjudgments and even accidents, according to the report, adding that the move was an obvious provocation. It also said China firmly opposes such provocative actions and has lodged solemn representations with the U.S. side. Beijing's anger comes as U.S. and Chinese relations have deteriorated to historic lows, with confrontations simmering on trade, military, and political matters. On the military front, U.S. naval forces regularly conduct operations near Taiwan and in the South China Sea, effectively challenging China's territorial claims. A Malaysian government official and a major glove manufacturer denied allegations of forced labor at the company's factories on Wednesday. The U.S. has banned the import of surgical gloves from the subsidiaries of the top glove company, also the world's biggest manufacturer of the product. Take a look.
So this person only attack top glove, they attack other companies and factory. He attacked the factories in Thailand. Then they sue him, and then they ban from entering Thailand. Then he come to Malaysia and try to disturb other people as well. So
countries worldwide have been scrambling to stock up on protective gear, from gloves to face masks, since the pandemic began earlier this year. But U.S. Customs and Border Protection said it decided to impose the ban on top glove based on reasonable evidence of forced labor in the manufacturing process. Now, this include indications of debt bondage, excessive overtime, retention of identification documents, and abusive working and living conditions, said in a statement. It also noted the critical need for disposable gloves during the pandemic, but said the move would not have a major impact on U.S. imports of the product. Top Glove said the ban affects about half of its sales to the United States. Malaysia is the world's biggest supplier of rubber gloves but the industry has long faced allegations of mistreating its workforce, who are mainly low-paid migrants. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic and widespread school closures, at least one-third of students affected around the world lack access to virtual education, according to a UN study released on Wednesday. In all, an estimated 463 million children lack the equipment or electronic access to pursue distance learning, said the report from UNICEF. Henrietta Fore, Executive Director of the UN Children's Fund, said in a statement, the sheer number of children whose education was completely disrupted for months on end is a global education emergency. The repercussions could be felt in economies and societies for decades to come. The UN estimates that 1.5 billion children worldwide have been affected by lockdowns or school closings occasioned by the pandemic. The report also underlined gaping geographical differences in children's access to distance education, with far fewer affected in Europe, for example, than in Africa or parts of Asia. The UN report is based on data gathered from roughly 100 countries measuring public access to the internet, to television, and to radio. Even children with adequate access may face other obstacles to distance education, whether the lack of a good workspace at home, pressure to do other work for the family, or a lack of technical support when computer problems arise, according to the UNICEF report. Asean in Focus will be right back.
The search for the best continues. Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 is now accepting audition entries. Kung ikaw ay 21 to 59 years old at may angking galing sa pagkanta, mapa-solo, duet, trio o banda man, magpadala na ng audition entry. Narito ang mga guidelines. Para makapagpasa ng entry sa singing category, contact Nikki sa 0977-651-9504. Ito na ang pagkakataon mo para maging tagisan ng galing grand winner at manalo ng 2 million pesos. Para sa karagdagang impormasyon, i-like ang Tagisan ng Galing Facebook page. Kaya sali na!
Vietnam is aiming for 100,000 technology companies to develop a digital economy by 2030 in Vietnam. Ralph Wandolph, Empire reports.
Vietnam hopes to develop 100,000 digital technology companies by 2030, which will contribute 20% to the country's gross domestic product. This was the highlight of the draft national strategy for developing Vietnamese digital technology companies, which the Minister of Information and Communications recently made public for comments. Digital technology companies are expected to play an important role in making Vietnam a developed and industrialized country with rapid, sustainable, and inclusive economic development, as well as turning Vietnam into a high-income country by 2045. The Vietnamese government estimated Vietnam would need at least 100,000 digital technology companies to develop a digital economy, smart urban areas, e-government, and promote the application of digital technology advancements in socio-economic fields, as well as accelerate national digital transformation. Under the draft strategy, Vietnam will focus on developing 4 types of digital technology companies, namely those developing core technologies, developing digital technology products, providing digital technology solutions, and digital technology startups. By 2025, Vietnam hopes to have 70,000 digital technology companies with a workforce of 1.2 million. Digital technology companies are expected to have revenue growth 1.5 to 2 times higher than the country's GDP expansion rate and export growth at 10 to 20% per year. Digital companies are expected to contribute 10% of GDP and to bring Vietnam into the top 3 countries in Asean and the top 70 in the world for technology and innovation ranking. The draft strategy aims for the country to have 100,000 digital technology companies by 2030 with workforce of 1.5 million. Digital companies would contribute 20% of GDP, and Vietnam would be one of the top 2 countries in ASEAN and the top 50 in the world in technology and innovation ranking. According to the Ministry of Information and Communications, about 43,000 enterprises currently operate in the information and technology sector, together with 17,000 others doing business in distributing and providing IT products and solutions. The ministry said hitting 100,000 digital technology companies would be challenging given the country's heavy dependence for core technology in foreign countries, the low added value of IT products, and limited innovation capacity and competitiveness, together with increasing competition from international IT companies. Vietnam's competitive advantage of cheap labor was being undermined by breakthroughs in new technologies, the ministry said. It was critical to develop a national strategy for digital technology, stressed the ministry. The ministry said the first solution would be improving the legal framework to create a favorable environment for digital technology companies. The country will also focus on strengthening research and development capacity, developing a robust market for digital technology companies, building a data industry and digital technology ecosystem. Developing human resources in digital technology was also important. The draft also said the government's digital technology projects would aim to create a spillover effect. This is Ralph Wandolph, Empire, bringing you the latest updates here in Vietnam. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Ralph. The Singapore firm trying to buy Newcastle United has blamed errant individuals with possible malicious intent for releasing controversial marketing materials, including doctored photos of Barack Obama, according to a report on Wednesday. Telegraph Nova Group, headed by 2 Singaporean entrepreneurs and their Chinese business partner, last week announced it was in advanced talks to buy the English Premier League side. But the bid hit a snag after reports emerged of manipulated photos support or purporting to show former U.S. President Barack Obama in a meeting with its founders in Paris, among other inconsistent claims. The photos, which showed Terrence and Nelson Law and Chinese jeweler Evangeline Shen with Obama, were manipulated versions of pictures taken in Singapore in December during an event sponsored by a BN Group-linked firm. In a statement reported by Singapore Straits Times newspaper on Wednesday, BN Group said there had been a number of queries relating to the company and marketing material that was purportedly released by the company. It added that the posting of the marketing material, which include matters in the pipeline but which have not been concluded, appears to be the result of the actions of certain errant individuals, possibly with malicious intent. The newspaper reported that the firm will also hire legal counsel to investigate the controversy. Nelson and Terence Law, who are cousins, did not reply to email queries from AFP. BN Group's bid came after a Saudi-backed consortium withdrew its offer to buy Newcastle in late July, following a months-long wait for Premier League approval. Anxiety concerns stemming from the pandemic have prompted many Filipinos to seek mental health support. That is according to a DOH official on Wednesday. In a virtual press briefing, Department of Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeray said the hotline of the National Center for Mental Health has received a high volume of calls from April to July when the country was placed under community quarantine to curb the rise in coronavirus disease infections. As for suicide-related calls, she noted that the average monthly number of calls is 53, peaking in July with 115 calls. In May, the World Health Organization warned of a massive increase in mental health conditions in the coming months. In its policy brief on COVID-19 and mental health, the WHO said reports indicate an increase in symptoms of depression and anxiety in several countries. The social distancing and enforced isolation, as well as massive job losses and uncertain future, are taking a psychological toll on people. Data from the NCMH as of August 15 showed that a total of 9,494 Filipinos were provided mental health services in the past year. On March 17, the DOH, through the NCMH, activated a team of researchers, or rather responders, composed of doctors, psychologists, and nurses who set up the operations of a 24/7 DOH COVID-19 hotline. The hotline aims to communicate and provide health and psychosocial support to Filipinos. Now, people needing mental health support and assistance are urged to call the NCMH crisis hotlines, which is 0917-899-USAP 8727 or 027-989-USAP and 1553 landline to landline toll free. Now, for decades, researchers have scratched their heads over how to combat deadly mosquito-borne diseases such as dengue fever. But could the solution come from producing mosquitoes? The French company Innova Feed, specialized in the production of insects to feed livestock, is partnering with the Australian Research World Mosquito Program, or WMP, to develop what it says is the first industrial-level production of mosquitoes. Now, these mosquitoes can be modified and sent into wild populations in order to keep numbers down. As infection rates of illnesses carried by mosquitoes increase, companies and researchers are racing to develop effective means of controlling the blood-sucking creatures' population. Dengue cases have multiplied by 8 in the past 2 decades, going from 500,000 cases in 2000 to 4.2 million in 2019. In most cases, dengue provokes a fever, nausea, and muscle and joint pains, but it can become deadly if it provokes internal bleeding or attacks vital organs. 10 years ago, WMP came up with a project partly funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to inoculate female mosquitoes with a bacterium which erases the transmission of viruses such as dengue to humans. Now, these mosquitoes carrying the bacterium called Wolbachia were let loose in Australia and then in Brazil, the French overseas territory of New Caledonia, and Indonesia. In Indonesia, an impact study carried out on 300,000 people demonstrated that dengue infection rates decreased by 77% in regions where the modified mosquitoes were introduced. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.
Established 1975, rising in the list of top-performing universities in the country, a pioneer in inclusive education and an institution with a dynamic education in response to societal needs. With already 5 campuses throughout the country, this is the New Era University. These are the programs offered in the branches outside of Metro Manila, starting off with the New Era University Pampanga branch. This is the first branch outside of Metro Manila and now offers complete basic education K-12 and collegiate programs.